Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey, and we're back with more coverage of this year's New York Film Festival. We got some more films to talk about, but first, here's a brief word from our sponsors.
Brought to you by BlackMagic Design, the world's highest quality products for the feature film, post and broadcast industries. BlackMagicDesign.com, the Tonkawa Film Festival, celebrating short films from around the world. Tonkawafilmfestival.com. And by Dehancer. Use the promo code RABBIT to receive 10% off Dehancer products. Dehancer.com.
Joining me now here in the studio, you know him, you love him. He's No Rest for the Weekend's own Yasin Lago.
Hello, folks.
Welcome back, buddy. It feels like we just did this.
I think because we just did.
We just did this.
We probably just did.
We are on top of it with the New York Film Festival coverage, and there's a lot of movies. We saw a lot of movies this time around.
A few.
We don't have a ton of time, so let's get right to it.
Absolutely.
What is your first film today?
The first film is The Secret Agent, coming out of Brazil by filmmaker Kleber Mendonça Filho. It stars Wagner Moura, who is, for those who don't know, he's most famous for playing Pablo Escobar on the Netflix show Narcos. He plays a researcher who's coming back to town, and this town is Recife. I mention the town specifically not only because it's his hometown, but because the city plays a kind of a character on its own. There's a lot of scenes that are just sort of encapsulate the time, encapsulate the feeling of the city, which takes place in 1977. And Brazil at the time was under military dictatorship, and from the military on down. So even the police were totally and thoroughly corrupt and brutal. The movie opens, he comes into a gas station to get gas, and there's a dead body in the way that's covered up, but is very casually left behind for someone to come get eventually. The police drive up and begin to harass him. They don't go anywhere near the dead body, and want to go through his car, and by the time the inspection ends, he hands them a pack of cigarettes to get him to get away.
Wow. Okay.
This is, and so this sets up the entire movie. He comes into town. He's living in a refugee community. There's a whole sort of there's like a whole community, I want to say, that lives with under aliases. They're running from wherever they came from. In some cases, there's some folks who are running back. They're circling back, and in this case, our lead, whose name is Marcello, but is actually Armando, as we go on to later on to find out, has returned to acquire some information and acquire some things that belong to him. And one of those things is his son that he's coming to get from his parents who have been looking out for him. He kind of wants to sort of pick his life back up where he had to leave it immediately. Without getting too much into the story, because I don't really want to spoil too much of it. A lot of it is you kind of soaking up the story, and it moves in such a wonderful sort of labyrinthine sort of complexity. The story moves. It follows these characters into their life. Sometimes it's the so-called villain or the antagonist. Sometimes we'll move into him. Sometimes we'll follow some of the people in the community. And the whole time, mind you, Wagner plays the Marcello Armando character with this sort of low-key intensity. You know, he's real cool, but you'll see he always has this sort of eye in every direction, waiting for some, shoe to drop. The story builds in such a way that after a while you will too. It builds into some rather graphic scenes in one or two cases.
Graphically violent?
Graphically violent.
Okay.
And out of nowhere. And I mention this only because the scenes stand out, because the movie is not about violence. It's a period drama. It's a political thriller a little bit. It's a very much a sort of reflection of the filmmaker going back home and filming his hometown that I believe he kind of grew up in as a child and remembered in that sort of way. And so it's a love letter to the city and a reflection of how the politics sometimes where you live was not the politics that it was 20, 30 years ago. Without getting into too much, he taps not only into the politics of the time, but into urban legends of the area, one being the hairy leg. If anyone knows what the hairy leg, I had to look it up. I didn't know about this, but there is an urban legend down there about the hairy leg. I don't want to go into it because it's in itself the scene where, and he brings it into the story. He mixes a little of what's happening with the story of what could possibly happen. So you have this. They find a shark with a dead body in it, and that sort of begins a certain investigation on the police side. And then along the way, we get into the sort of the red light district of the city, and that's where the hairy leg urban legend comes up. And I'll leave it for you to see because it's graphic, not in violence, but sexuality.
Oh, I see.
In that particular scene, and then it goes into just like this weird sort of comedy. You know, there are some nice laughs in there, some decent. Also because you're reaching for it in some cases, because it does get get pretty serious.
The comic relief you want.
You want a little comic relief, a little bit of humor in that. Yeah.
All right, we got to move on because we got more movies to talk about. But that sounds really interesting.
It does. It's good. It's a movie. It's a good movie.
This next one is one that we spoke about in our fall preview episode. It's called After the Hunt. We mentioned it was going to screen at New York Film Festival. I did catch a screening of it. Danny Mendez actually reviewed the film for us. By Luca Guadagnino, who has been on a roll lately. He made Challengers, and he made the movie Queer, which I think was at New York last year. And this one is... I feel like it's got a great ensemble cast. We mentioned the plot, but I'll go over it again briefly. This involves Julia Roberts. She plays a professor this takes all place at Yale University. Her husband is a therapist. Andrew Garfield is her friend, who is also another professor there. And Ayo Edebiri is a student who's an aide of Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts sort of has this almost like a sycophantic following with her students, and even her husband is played by Michael Stolberg. He mentions, like, you tend to get these people who are drawn to you, and, do you get them because they're good or because they find you so charismatic? So one thing I will say, it's an amazingly well done film, amazingly well acted. It almost feels more like a play. There's a lot of conversations in rooms, and a lot of it is just pure writing and acting. Although Guadagnino does move the camera every once in a while to kind of shake you up or change your vantage point. Like, he'll do these weird overhead angle shots and different little angles and things like that in the middle of a conversation to let you know, hey, something's not right here, or we don't know what to feel here or something.
Right. Look between the lines a little bit.
Right. And so the plot is basically there's a dinner party at Julia Roberts' house in which Andrew Garfield is there, and so is Ayo Edebiri. They leave together, and he says he's going to walk her home. He walks her home, and then we find out later that Edebiri accuses him of doing something inappropriate. She says that he sexually assaulted her, and we don't exactly know what that means. And at one point, the big sort of crux is, like, she tells Julia Roberts before anybody else, and Julia Roberts is like, "Why are you telling me this first?" And she's like, "Well, she's just trying to, like." And you kind of don't know why. It's like, why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you tell somebody else? But she tells her first because Hank, who's Andrew Garfield's character, is her friend and her colleague. And she's like, well, you always stick so much up for women, and I figured you'd believe me. And she's like, okay, well, let's figure this out. She has a very, what's the word I'm looking, sort of almost an aloof approach to it. She doesn't want to dive in and say, yes, let's, go get him. And she doesn't not do that either. So she's very much Switzerland at first.
At the very least, not reactionary.
Yeah, she's not jumping off half cocked, and she's known Hank for a really long time.
Right. Which is probably based on the not reacting
Right.
right off.
So you have this dilemma of hers of being like, okay, so what do I do? And of course, when the school finds out there's actions, and I don't want to get too much into the plot because there's a lot of little twists and turns in it that could be, I just don't want to spoil because they're interesting. And Julia Roberts plays this really interesting character. She can be sort of very aloof and very stoic, and it's kind of pointed out to her. And she even remarks that she, what am I coming off cold again? Kind of thing. And Michael Sternberg is very chill, and he kind of just deals with her. Like you can tell he loves her very much, and they have this really complex relationship because they've been together for a really long time. In the description it says a secret from Julia Roberts, that character's past comes out. That's also very interesting, and you don't really find out what it is until the end. Everything is kind of like complicated and very fitting considering everybody works in the philosophy department. So so it's like this very it's ethical, moral dilemmas, it's philosophical, it's almost like with the incident itself is it's almost like a Schrodinger's cat situation because we don't get to see it. We only get to hear about it. And there's different things about identity, and there's sort of there's different commentary between sort of generations. So you got Julia Roberts' generation versus Etta Berry's generation, and that young generation being, the sort of, I don't know, way on the third wave of feminism and things like that, and the Me Too movement, and her wanting to get justice. And at one point, Julia Roberts says very frankly to her, listen, if you want to stay in this world, basically the world of academia, you're going to have to deal with a bunch of old white guys. And if you come out publicly about this, they're not going to want to go near you. They're going to be afraid that you're going to accuse them of something, and they don't want to be with that. They're not going to want to hire that person. And, she tells her this out of just hey, I didn't make this way, but this is the way it is. And it's Etta Berry said, well, then maybe I shouldn't stay in academia. And I was like, you're a philosophy major. What else are you going to do? you write a book and you teach. That's about it. That's, there's not a lot of great careers out there for philosophers.
And because I would imagine the movie has to leave a certain amount open for interpretation also,
and
whether
that's
or not
kind
we
of
give you the answers or not.
That's kind of Guadagnino's approach. You never see what happened, and I think that's to the film's benefit. It does raise a lot more questions than it answers, and I feel that's on purpose as well. It's not a great time. It's not a feel-good film.
Right.
It will leave you pondering things, and I think that's the whole point.
That's probably the whole point.
And some people are going to like it, and some people are really not.
Right.
It's just not going to be everybody's cup of tea. If you like this, you know who you are, I think, if you like this type of movie. Right. Is it good? Yes. Did I enjoy it? Not really. For me, it wasn't an enjoyable experience other than to look at it and go, oh, wow, this is really well done.
Right. I think if you're there for the actors, to watch acting, you're going to enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's not a movie to enjoy.
Yeah,
probably.
if you're into the story, and it really I feel it also, it depends on which side of the spectrum you're coming from. If you're our age, you're going to think one thing. If you're a 20-something, you're going to think another thing. And it's also split the male-female divide. So it's going to be interesting to see how people react to this movie. Right. I said to Danny, I was like, well, this is probably going to get some attention from, the awards and stuff. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know if it will or not, but I do think it's really good. I think it's really well done. For me, though, one of the sort of criteria of do I really like this movie is rewatchability, and I don't need to see this one again. But some people are going to want to watch it over and over because they'll get more and more out of it.
I mean, what you call it? Not every great movie is rewatchable.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you, Schindler. But that's a whole other.
All right, man. Let's move on. What's the next one you got?
The next film we're here to talk about is Anemone, starring Daniel Day-Lewis.
Who came out of his cave like the groundhog.
Yes.
And just comes.
Yes.
He'll probably just come out and win an Oscar, and then he'll dive back in.
And you may wonder why, and the reason is writer-director Ronan Day-Lewis, his son. Now, I'm not saying absolutely that that's the reason why he came out, but it's a pretty good reason. The movie is about two brothers, basically. One played by Sean Bean, the other one played by Daniel Day-Lewis. Sean Bean is back in Sheffield, England, with his wife, who we think is his wife, is Samantha, played by Samantha Morton. I can't say enough about Samantha Morton. I don't know. It's not necessarily that she's given a whole lot in this. Let me just tell you that. But Samantha Morton can act with a reaction. She can just make a face, and her acting just from that is more than most people working today. But she plays his wife, and they have they're raising a son together. The son is not Sean Bean's. Sean Bean basically is filling in for the missing Ray, who's played by Daniel Day-Lewis.
So he's raising his nephew.
He's raising his nephew, but he's living the life of. He's living in the home with Samantha Morton and raising the son as his own. And the son considers him his father because he has never known Daniel Day-Lewis. He left Samantha Morton's character almost immediately. Self-exiled himself in the woods, a little cabin in the middle of nowhere. Well, the son is going through some things. He's enlisted in the army, and he's fighting in the army. And he had a fight with one kid where he almost killed him. And so he's home, and he's trying to figure out what they're trying to figure out what to do with him. Sean Bean gets on his bike and drives out for a while until he gets out so off the grid that there aren't any roads. And he's this little cabin in the middle of nowhere surrounded by little flowers, which is the flowers are the title of the movie. And the flowers are a connection to their father, who, as you find through conversation, was a very big problem. The story centers on really the relationship of the brothers and how the one brother seems like Daniel Day-Lewis seems like he was left without anyone to protect him. He doesn't feel as if he had his brother there to protect him against the two fathers that were so abusive to him in his life. His birth father, his father was at home, who would beat him rather than talk to him. And the priest did not bother Sean Bean's younger version, but unfortunately, Daniel Day-Lewis's younger character, as a boy, I should say, suffered some terrible stuff. And the movie is basically just a series of conversations. There's really no one else. Samantha Morton is in it, but she's really, a lot of her shots are just her sort of like trying to live day to day. She's an emergency call operator. And so that job is for her is just, like working at the supermarket. It's like no problem, where everyone else would be, tense and under the pressure. When she goes home, she's got to deal with a son who doesn't know really which direction to go in, and he knows that his temper is going to take him to a place that's going to be either jail or the grave. And meanwhile, back at the cabin, Daniel Day-Lewis is just sort of going through or getting out a lot of stuff that he kept inside. Because, and as the story unfolds, it turns out that he was a soldier himself in the British Army during the time of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, where he was assigned. And at some point, he became a special ops agent for the military, and had done a few things that he couldn't cope with. One in particular that possibly ruined him.
This is a tortured guy.
He's a very, very tortured guy, to the point that there's one scene where he goes into this graphic. I mean, and it's him talking about it, but it's a graphic.
Do we see any
fantasy.
of this stuff?
No. Every so often he will have sort of these sort of fever dream kind of visions of you. At one point you see a floating woman, and you don't understand who that is, and later on you get an idea that he's holding on to memories in such a way that they're haunting him. And the visuals provided by Ronan De Lewis are beautiful.
It sounds. I mean, like I want to do a double feature with After the Hunt in this movie.
It's one of those movies like, oh well, would you watch it again? I think I would. It's not necessarily, like you said, it's not an enjoyable movie. It's not like, oh man, I came out of there, uplifted and just, no, it's not a downer, but it does get into how if you let your past inside and kept inside, it could rot you from the inside out, and sometimes, which a lot of people don't have, someone to come and help them jar that memory and that stuff out and be there for everything that comes out of that person, and a lot comes out of.
Wow, it sounds really powerful. Like,
it is.
I have one. We'll probably have to cut it for time, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. I got one more thing to talk about, and this isn't a film; it's a series. So there's a documentary coming to Apple TV Plus. It'll probably be on by the time this airs. It's called Mr. Scorsese.
Oh,
and guess who it's about?
The one and only.
Are you a Martin Scorsese fan? Being people who like movies and being from New York, it's like how can you not be a Martin Scorsese fan?
I think if you're not a Martin Scorsese fan, you're doing it on purpose. You're legitimately just trying to be contradictory.
It's like act of defiance.
Yeah. So okay.
He's done so many great movies. So it's a 5-part series. It's going to be on Apple TV Plus. They showed the first 2 episodes at New York Film Festival, so I won't go beyond that. In this, we really kind of get to see more about his life. I've seen Scorsese interviewed multiple times. This is probably the most intimate interview. He seems very relaxed, and maybe because he's older now, but we learn a lot more about his life growing up. He was a Little Italy, Lower East Side kid growing up in an Italian neighborhood where there really were gangsters. And when he grew up, like movies like Mean Streets and his first film, Who's That Knocking at My Door, really just came out of the sense of reality, the reality that he was living in. And we hear from different actors. Of course, they talked to Robert De Niro. They talked to Leonardo DiCaprio. They talked to Cate Blanchett at one point. Spike Lee is in the film because he's a good friend of Marty's, another great New York filmmaker. I have to say, it's a feel-good, like sort of celebration of the movies and a really insightful look at his life.
Right.
The merge of the two, and there were certain movies that he will tell you that at one point he talks about King of Comedy. King of Comedy was not really his movie. That was De Niro's movie, and he kind of didn't want to be there, and he had a hard time with that movie. But when things like Goodfellas came along, that he knew that world so well. He had read the book and was like, called up the writer and said, "I want to write a movie with you. Like this is and of course he made one of the greatest gangster pictures of all time." And it also talks about his collaboration with DiCaprio later in life and the things that they were able to do together. It's inspiring in a way because it's about a guy who is, I don't know, he's like in his 70s or 80s right now, and he still has things he wants to say. And he made movies that he wanted to make, despite kind of people not wanting to make them. And like nobody wanted to make Gangs of New York. Nobody wanted to finance Mean Streets.
Right.
One of the things I've heard him say before, and it's one of those things that kind of makes you go, what? But Martin Scorsese, when he was a young man, was in a preparatory seminary.
Right.
He was going to be a priest.
Yeah, I've heard this.
How many movies would we have lost if he was, Father Martin instead of, Martin Scorsese? So and the real life stuff that you learn about him too, you're like, oh wow, he really, like there's people who go, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. No.
Right.
Like mobsters were whacking guys
Right.
and leaving them in alleys and he would find bodies when he was a kid. Like
Right.
it was hard, and for him to come from that, and then you also hear from his contemporaries, to hear from people like Steven Spielberg and Brian De Palma. It's just very kind of like you go, oh, that's a filmmaker. That's what a filmmaker is supposed to be.
He's one of the few I would say, prolific auteurs.
Well, he writes with people though, but he's not a writer director in this strictest sense, but he is a true filmmaker who puts everything he's got into these movies.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But he's a great collaborative filmmaker, a great artist.
Look at all his stuff. They talk about the way he works with actors, and he's such a wonderful actors director. Like, if you're out there and you want to make movies, watch this.
Yeah.
It will inspire you and teach you a few things. But that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip once again down the rabbit hole. For more content, visit the website norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube, youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. And you can find even more content on our Patreon, btrpmedia.com. I'd like to thank my man Yasin Lago for coming out and seeing these movies with me, and our sponsors, BlackMagic Design, the Tonkawa Film Festival, and the good folks at D. Hanser. For the BTRP Media Network, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
This is the BTRP Media Network.